Holiday to Portland for Anthony Simons and 2 second-round draft picks.
Breaking news out of the association surrounding the Boston Celtics.
The Celtics have traded Kristaps Porzingis to the Atlanta Hawks.
50 for Jaylen Brown. This is Pritchard time. The crowd can sense it. Over 3 Bulls. It's great in and out dribble. Oh! He set off the smoke detector.
Can you believe it? The New England Patriots are headed back to the Super Bowl. What's up, everyone, and welcome in to this Your Septic Source instant reaction. Well, not sort of instant, but reaction here to the New England Patriots beating the Denver Broncos 10-7. It was a slugfest in a blizzard, and, we're facing the Seattle Seahawks, as we now know, and we're going to get into the Seattle game, or in the Super Bowl game, and do a preview of that later in the show. But, before we get to that, I just want to just take a step back and look at, how far we've come from the last 2 years being 4-13 teams. The Patriots this season have more wins than the last 3 seasons combined after going 8-9 in 2022-2023 season. And basically, you are a team that nobody expected to be here. You had doubters throughout the playoffs. Drake Maye did not play well, but the defense continues to step up, and that's something that we have to give credit where it's due. This is a team that nobody saw coming. This is a team that Mike Vrabel has basically turned the entire culture around. And, in this game, it is just a hard, just run the ball, nothing going well on either side. But I have to give credit to Drake Maye for not turning the ball over. And I know that is a low bar that he needs to meet, especially in the Super Bowl, but as his career goes on. But we saw the first 2 games against the Chargers and the Texans, he turned the ball over and he put his team in jeopardy on multiple occasions. And this was a game where he didn't have the big plays to, sort of make amends for those mistakes early, but he didn't have those mistakes. He kept the ball. He took sacks instead of fumbles. He put the ball in a place where the Patriots were kicking on 4th down instead of having turnovers. And, the punter was truly terrible in this game for the Patriots. I mean, multiple times, 20, 30-yard kicks out of bounds made it really hard for the Patriots defense. But the Patriots defense, as it has done throughout this entire postseason, came through. And in this game, Denver does jump out to that early lead on that Stidham pass. Basically, at that point in the game, we have all these questions about what will Jarrett Stidham look like? How will Sean Payton design an offense? And right out the gate, they come flying, and it was a missed coverage by Gonzalez for sure. But nevertheless, they come flying out of the start of this game, and it looks like it's going to be a long night for the Patriots. It seems like Jarrett Stidham and the Broncos have something rolling. That the ability for Jarrett Stidham to throw, the accuracy for him to run as well. It looked like he was going to have a field day, and boy was I wrong. Well, not that I was wrong, but the entire nation was just completely off about Jarrett Stidham. from that, play on, he just looked baffled, out of sorts on any sort of pressure the Patriots ran. And the Patriots, from that sort of moment on in the game, just threw pressure at him, all night long, forcing him to drop back in the pocket. And this is all in the first half before, it became just a, battle of who could get, a couple yards on a run in that blizzard that we saw in the second half, right? And I'll get to the second half in a second. But in this first half, right, we have the turning point, which was the fumble on the backward pass. I'll get to that in a second. But throughout the night, the Patriots just pressure Stidham, force him to make the plays, and basically be the reason that they won the game. And there's a reason he's a backup quarterback. He didn't have the ability to do that, and Sean Payton realized that early in the second half, and they went to just handing the ball off. And as the storm picked up, the Patriots couldn't do anything either, but the Patriots had the lead at that point, and it just felt like nobody else was going to score in that game. And that's basically what happened. And to be honest, I'm not sure that the Patriots win this game if they don't get that backwards pass from Jared Stidham, because they really didn't score. They had one field goal later in the game to give them the lead, but there was a bunch of missed field goals. But other than that, they barely got across half field on most drives. There was a lot of 4 and outs, running the ball with Stevenson, who would get 3 yards a carry, something like that. Maye taking sacks instead of trying to force it downfield with a throw, wisely, because you knew you had your defense that was going to come big on every possession, and you had that trust, Mike Vrabel does, Drake Maye does, that your defense was going to be able to make the stops necessary. And so I give a lot of credit, as I said at the top of the show, to Drake Maye for just, being a game manager, right? And he is a star quarterback. You don't want your quarterbacks to be game managers, right? That's where you get, that sort of just backup QB comes in and just, makes the necessary plays, but you don't see the star plays from a quarterback. But this wasn't the game for that. This wasn't the game you were going to see Drake Maye try and throw it deep. He had that one play early in the game where he almost threw a pick. I think it was credit to Kayshon Boutte, maybe it was Diggs, to slap it out of the defender's hands, or it could have been an early pick. But that was really the only scary moment. Other than that, they just, I'm not going to say it wasn't stressful because you're only up 3, but the Drake Maye did not put the ball in harm's way at all in this game. A big turning point in this game was probably Sean Payton going for it on 4th and 1, basically trying to get a touchdown instead of taking the points. And, in hindsight, yeah, you probably would have taken the points. But the Patriots do go down the next possession, I believe, and run the same 4th and 1 and get the first down on Drake Maye's diving attempt. Or not even diving, but, scrum pile, and they have to, challenge it and, go to technology to see if the call stands, right? But, you look at that sort of sequence of drives there, and you're like, the Broncos' inability to score, and then the Patriots are able to come down and score, and that, was the seal in the game. Obviously, there's still, 18, 21 something minutes left in this game, right? But the fact that nobody else could score and there wasn't, much offense from that point on, it felt like a big turning point in the game, right? It gave the Patriots short field, and then the ability for the Patriots to come away with points, right? But we know the story of the game was not the offense, it was the defense, as it has been all season. Just carried them in all 3 playoff games here, holding teams to single digit points in all 3 games. They actually gave up the most points they gave up all postseason in this game was 7. Just consistent pressure on Stidham, as I'd said. Milton Williams, another fantastic impact on this game, including he blocked a field goal attempt. I believe it was Milton Williams that blocked the field goal attempt from the Broncos. There was a lot of chirp coming into this game saying the Broncos had a great offensive line and the Patriots defense, was flawed given the offenses they've been going up with. And this was definitely the best offensive line they faced all postseason and maybe all season long. But Barmore, Milton Williams, Kayvon Chason just absolutely just destroyed that notion. I mean, they were all over Jared Stidham in this game. And it wasn't even, the Patriots didn't even send that many, 5-man blitzes. It was just the 4 guys getting the job done on every single possession. Darmore, just dominated inside. He had the trash talk, right? Said after the game, all-pro don't mean bleep, right? The all-pro offensive line that the Broncos had could do nothing in this game. Tackling on the outsides too, right? This was a game that any yards you could get was huge, and the Patriots did a fantastic job of limiting, running backs to just 1 to 2 yards a carry, making it just so much harder to gain momentum down the field. Christian Gonzalez, he had a rough season. I'm not going to say rough season, but it was a quiet season for him. Games where he had great moments. The first half was definitely not as good as the second half, and he turned it on, later in the season. But in these playoffs, he's been just an absolute stud. And he sort of caps off his, at least, AFC side of the playoffs, right? We'll see what he does in the Super Bowl. But he caps off, this run to the Super Bowl with a game-sealing interception, his first interception of the game. He's been so great. He did have that miscue early in the game that led to the Broncos touchdown. I'm not sure if that was a miscue between, him and I think it was Davis or whoever the safety was. Maybe he thought the safety was going to come over and help him out. But after that, right, he just locks in, and there wasn't many passing attempts from that moment on as the storm picked up. But when Stidham had to throw it to give his team a chance to win, basically, right place, right time, but still comes away with the game-winning interception. I think the defense all season has felt overlooked, and there were definitely moments in the regular season, especially Week 18, the Miami game, where they struggled in that second quarter. But these playoffs, this is the reason why I think they might have a chance against the Seahawks. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But, on paper, they shouldn't have a chance, right? The talent that the Seahawks have, it just outnumbers the Patriots on almost all levels. But the defense and the camaraderie of this team right now gives me hope that maybe they'll have a chance in this game. We talked a little bit about Drake Maye, right? It was not pretty, hasn't been pretty all season, but it was smart in this game. He had a great play to end the first half where there's 5 seconds left, and he scrambles and he slides down inbounds, which gives the ability of Mike Vrabel to call a timeout with 1 second left and give his team a chance to kick a field goal. They don't end up making the field goal. In fact, it was a pretty awful kick. But, that being said, just the decision-making from Drake Maye in this game was fantastic. As I said, no turnovers, right? He took sacks instead of forcing those just basically disasters that we've seen from him in the playoffs. He was mobile, right? He won the game after that interception from Gonzalez by scrambling out to his left. I think it was a designed run, actually, from Josh McDaniels. And he sort of rolls left and stretches out for the first down to put the game on ice with under 2 minutes and a first down, right? And obviously the Broncos had no timeouts at that moment, right? I think that is an ability. I think that Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel have called a pretty conservative postseason for Drake Maye, especially after that. After the games where he's been fumbling the ball and stuff, they've tried to limit the decision making because it is a ramp up and this is his first time in the playoffs, and so he has the first 2 weeks of the regular season. It was a pretty sort of conservative game planning, and then it got better and opened up more as the season went on, and then it sort of resets in the playoffs, right, as you would expect it to do, right? And so there haven't been a lot of design runs for him, but quite frankly, in a game like this, and really the last 3 games when you're playing such great defenses in terms of pass defense, I'd like to see a little bit more design runs because Drake Maye has the speed to get you first downs that you otherwise would not be getting. And if you design them, you don't worry about him fumbling the ball as much or making a bad decision because, he'll be running right from the jump and not trying to, scramble inside the pocket and, get blindsided, which we've saw in the last couple games. Will Campbell, a very rough start. He had that play early in the game where I think that was the play where Drake Maye almost threw that interception where Will Campbell was lined up and I forget who the edge rusher was for the Broncos, but he's lined up really wide and he gets right around him and Will Campbell tries to dive and sort of block him in the legs, trip him there, and it doesn't work. He gets right by and gets to Drake Maye. Drake Maye gets hit pretty hard as he's throwing it. That's probably, it wasn't a great decision to throw that ball, but it, wasn't helped by the pressure that he was sped up by. But other than that, he was pretty solid in this game. We didn't, there was only 3 penalties in this game, right? A very, the Broncos or the refs just let both teams play. I think that was the only play on the Patriots that false start. Or I guess, that play, but he had a false start early in the first half as well. Right? So other than that, a very great game. I'm not going to say great game, but a game where you don't notice Will Campbell. And, at this point, I think that's a good thing. The game management was great, right? Just running the ball down in the fourth quarter, knowing that, as long as you could take chunks of 3-4 minutes off the clock on each drive, you knew the Patriots defense was going to come through. It was a lot of just, run, punt, and then play defense. And, it worked pretty seamlessly for the Patriots in that third and fourth quarter. Moving on here from that game to a Super Bowl preview here. And, yes, the Seattle Seahawks should be favored. You have Sam Darnold, who, has had, iffy moments this season, has had that, history of quote-unquote choking in the big moment. But he looked fantastic tonight against the Rams. And Jaden Smith-Njigba, he is arguably, him and Puka are the 2 best receivers in the NBA or in the NFL. And quite frankly, I know Gonzalez is going to have a huge game on him, but you're also going to have to guard some of the other players in Rashid Shaheed, right? And other players that the Seattle Seahawks have. And we'll see if the Patriots defense can get to Sam Darnold the same way that they have been able to do in the last couple of games. It's going to be a closer game. The Patriots are going to struggle on offense like they have all, three games, right? The Seattle defense is better than the Broncos, in my opinion. And quite frankly, this is a game that the Patriots are going to have to win with their defense once again. And that's what worries me because I think, we know the Seattle Seahawks offense, when they're humming, is much better than the Broncos offense. And that I worry about the Patriots scoring, right? We saw, the Seattle Seahawks scored 31 points in this game, right? And they gave up 27, 26, whatever it was, to the Rams. But I don't think the Patriots offense is capable of scoring 27 points in the way it's been playing, at least this postseason, right? Drake Maye, now, you're going to get solid weather, and you have, 2 weeks to rest up and game plan. But that being said, right, I'm not sure that you're going to be able to get 27 points or more from Drake Maye in the offense. Especially on a stage like that where the nerves are going to be huge for Drake Maye. Even for Sam Darnold, but more for Drake Maye, given that his sort of young stature in the NFL right now, right? And so I'm probably going to predict I'm gonna say 28-17 victory for the Seattle Seahawks. I think that this is a great season, and by no means is it a failure. What probably wasn't a failure after round 2, and now you're in the Super Bowl. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. We're gonna do a full Super Bowl preview in the next couple of weeks, right? We have 2 weeks here until the Super Bowl on February 8th. I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Follow on social media. We are not gonna have our normal Celtics coverage this week in terms of live, or not live, but instant reactions after every Celtics game, but we're going to do game reactions the following day, later in that afternoon. So it's not going to be right after the game. It's going to be the next day in the afternoon, as I am pretty busy this week and don't have time at night right now to be recording videos after the game. But we're still going to do some sort of reaction. We'll still have highlights and content on social media, so make sure to check that out all week long. And check out the latest podcast episode that I dropped last night on the Celtics win over the Nets, trade deadline preview. We also previewed at the end of the show the Broncos Patriots game. You can go watch and see how our predictions fared up. I definitely think that nobody expected the blizzard that we got in Denver, so it's a very different outcome. Right, I predicted them to cover the spread of 3.5, and it ends up being just a 3-point game. But until next time, go Celtics and go Patriots. Super Bowl 59. Here we come.